Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours with AvaTax. Today I have some guests here, some of my favorite people. I've got Bob Erdman, who I've worked with for a very long time. Bob, good to have you here.
Great to be here, Ted.
And a new guy who I am just meeting for the first time, Evan Wright. Evan, thanks for joining us.
I appreciate you having me on, Ted.
Thanks. So today, you guys are part of the partner launch team, and you're helping to talk to customers about how they can get their connectors certified.
Yep, that's it exactly. So it's I've been with so a little quick introduction for those of you who don't know me. My name is Bob Erdman. I actually started here at Avalara. It's been about 4 years ago. Started off in the implementation department, helping customers get connected to AvaTax, and then migrated over to the business development unit and work on the partner launch team, where I still help folks get connected to AvaTax. However, this time we work with partners rather than specific API customers. So part of this team, we do the technical review and certification of AvaTax integrations. And I work pretty closely with Evan on the other side of the equation there to sign up these customers and get the billing done.
Yeah, so brief introduction about me. My name is Evan Wright. I am a business development manager over here at Avalara. And essentially what I do is I work with our partners, whether those be platforms such as an ERP, a POS solution, an e-commerce solution, to help them structure a relationship with Avalara and help them build out a connector to help their customers utilize our solution to calculate sales and use tax. And so I work very closely with Bob. Once I get a structured agreement in place, I hand it over to Bob to really be my technical guru to help them get certified and get live and get a repeatable integration in place.
Yeah, I think that's one of the unique things about our organization, and specifically our team, is that we have this group in place that helps partners integrate with our service.
Because if there's one thing that I've learned about sales tax, it's that everyone has different accounting processes, and you have to find a way to fit sales tax into the accounting process that your company has chosen, and the way that your company handles invoices, the way that your company processes orders, and so on.
Exactly, and not only that, it's every company's going to do it a little differently, and every partner's got to take into account how their merchants do taxes. So it's a fairly complex problem to solve.
So you guys prepared a presentation for us. So let's go through the presentation, and then let's take some questions from these customers.
Awesome.
So first of all, I'd like to mention that if anyone is interested, we have a fantastic Crush DC event that's coming up. Bob Erdman and myself will both be there. We'd love to meet with all of you, and we'd love to spend some time with you talking about your tax challenges. So if any of you are interested, Bob will be presenting some various details about enterprise connector development at Crush DC. So let's jump straight into the presentation for today.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and kick this off, Ted. So essentially what we want to talk to you about today is how to get an integration certified and utilize our team. Whether you be a customer or whether you are a platform provider, we work with in a very similar fashion. So the way a lot of these conversations start is around how do we get sales tax integrated into your business system. And so you may start evaluating Avalara, but you may also use an ERP provider or a custom business system. And what our team really does is we help structure this relationship with that ERP provider to make them build a repeatable integration and give the Avalara stamp of approval on these integrations. So you can go ahead and move to the next slide there, Ted.
Okay.
So we call these development solution partners. And really the benefit of signing up for this program is we have created this little incubator of sorts within our business development organization called the Partner Launch Team. And we provide sales and marketing assistance to our platform providers, as well as a whole revenue share agreement on behalf of,
So can I just ask, is this basically how a development company out there, like a contractor or a consulting company, they could build an integration into AvaTax and earn money off of that? Is that right?
That's absolutely correct, Ted. So, and they'll actually create a reoccurring revenue stream off of this, making sure it's a certified integration and ensuring that we get this built properly from day one.
Yeah, and I know I've spent a lot of time with Bob. One of the things that we're spending a lot of time doing is providing help for what it is that makes a good integration. And Bob, you and I worked very closely on that developer guide.
Yes, yeah, that developer guide was a big project, and it's been a huge help with our partners in understanding how to consume our service.
And this is really what sets aside our program from every other company out there, is we don't just help you with tax, we help you with compliance, not just calculating the correct tax rate. Anyone can look up a postal code rate table, but we actually get you the correct tax for your correct product, the correct exemptions for your customers who have exemption certificates, and the correct offline tax tables for your retail point of sale solution.
Absolutely. And one of the benefits of using our solution is we've seen every different funky tax scenario you could possibly imagine, and we really help our customers, ensure that they're compliant within their system, and whether they're using an ERP system or an e-commerce system or a POS solution or just a custom solution to a marketplace, we help all sorts of different customers integrate the AvaTax service within their business platform.
Can I ask, on this slide here, what is a sandbox?
Sandbox. So that's a great question, Ted. A sandbox is a development account. So we provide these for free to our partners to test and utilize the solution within their platform.
And if I can just interject here, yesterday I had a webinar which covered the patch notes for our March AvaTax release, and we announced that the March AvaTax release is currently available on Sandbox, and it's going to be on Sandbox for the duration of this week. I think all told, it's 10 business days in Sandbox, where all of our partners and customers can experiment with the latest release, test their software, make sure that they have no unexpected surprises. And obviously, we do a lot of backwards compatibility testing and research, but this is an extra step above that to just help give you that level of comfort.
Yeah, and our partners who get the sandbox, it's a non-expiring sandbox, so they have the ability to go in as you're releasing these new API updates to make sure that their integration that they built still works and there's no surprises that are lurking in the dark corners.
Gotcha.
Perfect. And then one last thing, yeah, as a signed partner, you get access to the team. You'll have either myself or a member of my team as a dedicated technical advisor for your duration as a partnership with Avalara. So that's a huge boon.
Yeah. So also to add to that, there's essentially two P's to this pod. Once we get an agreement in place with the solution, we provide as free of charge a technical advisor, we call them technical gurus, Bob, as well as a sales and marketing contact to really figure out, once we get a certified integration, how do we want to go to market together? What is the best way in utilizing the power of Avalara's marketing engine to really help reach your customers and help figure out what is the best way to drive revenue to your product?
And we do both the marketing and the technical work in conjunction. That happens at the same time. So when your integration is ready, it's certified, we should hopefully already have customers lined up ready to sign up.
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing this for a long time now. Like, Avalara has been around since 2004. We've been signing up partners and integrations for a very long time. Are we really over 500 at this point?
I believe we are over 500.
500 different accounting systems.
There's a ton of accounting systems out there.
How do you guys even keep track of all that?
I think it's a lot of research. That's where Evan does all his research.
I started in our sales organization here, Ted, and moving over to the business development group, that's what I was worried about. Well, we already have 500. How many more platform providers really are there out there? But you'd be surprised at all the different niche systems that are catered towards a specific industry, to a specific little niche, and they all have a tax problem.
And I'll tell you, I've been working with some of the various business units that handle telecom tax and lodging tax and so forth, and they all have their own custom, accounting processes. And every one of those things is an area where the general principles of AvaTax can help, but the integration is what provides that the last mile of value.
Yep.
Well, we really see there's a functionality gap within these ERP solutions or business solutions that they just don't handle tax well, and they put it on the customer to really manually do this and manually maintain it, most of these systems. So there really is a value add to getting a certified integration within Avalara, within their system.
And for those developers out there that might be considering signing up for a partnership with us. It's important to kind of remember most all integrations are going to make a fit for a partnership. Really, we're looking for a couple things. Is there a potential of a simple, repeatable process for the end user? If there is, awesome. We want you to call us up and sign up for a development partnership, and we'll certify that integration and get you, into the program. However, if it's kind of a one-off, very custom implementation, that might not be a good fit for the partnership program.
Okay, so what you're saying is, like, if a customer has something that's really unique and unlikely to be spotted again, then that's a customer that would really deserve a custom integration rather than a certified connector. Is that right?
Exactly.
Okay. All right.
Perfect. All right, so moving on.
So really, if you are interested and you believe that this would be a good fit for your organization, the next step is really to have a conversation with me where we walk through your requirements, walk through your system in general, and then we'll get a partnership agreement in place. It's a pretty simple document that just explains our process and our certification process over here. And then I introduce you to Bob, and
then we start looking at the technical requirements. So a lot of these integrations already come to us, half built. Perhaps they've signed up for a customer signed up and the developer's done the work for that customer, but now that developer just wants to see what does it take to go that extra mile to get it certified.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. We've focused on some pretty high level stuff. There's probably some developers on this call right now who are interested. How do we test a connector? So let's say they've decided they want to engage your services to figure out how good their connector is. How can they test it?
So there's one area that they can go right now into developer. So developer.avalara.com. You can go under tests, and there's going to be some test cases. They can review those test cases. Mm-hmm. More importantly, though, if they head over to the Become Certified section and look at our certification badges, we certify, and actually it's coming up here in a couple slides. We certify by function. So
do you mind if I pop off
pop off this and head over to.
So I'm just going to show everyone what the developer site looks like for this certification work. And if you go here under the developer site, what Bob is talking about is there's a test section up here that lists a variety of test cases that you can use. And then there's also assistance on what it takes to become certified. And earlier on, we mentioned that there's the developer guide right here. The developer guide will basically walk you through how to achieve those successes on those tests. So we've got 3 different resources. One tells you what you need to achieve. Another one tells you how you can get help. And the third one is a full set of documentation that you can go through at your leisure.
Exactly.
Okay. So I've sidetracked you on your presentation long enough. Please continue.
Yeah. No. So we got up to the point where Evan had introduced me to the partner. So at that point, we'll review what the partner's already built and identify any gaps in certification. And then we'll just work with that partner on closing those gaps, going through the certification, making sure we have documentation, making sure that we have some internal documentation on workflows and pathways on how to configure and whatnot of the application. And then we work with the sales and marketing folks to find that early adopter customer. We actually, in the partner launch group, not only certify, we actually take the first customer live on this integration. So essentially, it's taking that integration for a test drive to make sure that first customer experience is a good one.
So if I was an entrepreneur, a young entrepreneur starting out, which I was a very long time ago, I may have a very youthful looking face, but I'm actually starting to gray and everything. So if I can backtrack 30 years when I was young and would have started up something like this. What I would do is I would go to you and say, all right, I've built something, test it, and help me with my first customer. Is that right?
Exactly. So we'll run through essentially how do you configure AvaTax, how do you identify exempt customers, how do you identify product taxability, and walk through the workflow of the application. So see where the touch points are on tax, make sure we're getting the correct tax calculation, make sure when that transaction is finalized, we're posting that transaction to the AvaTax account.
So let's say, for example, because obviously I'm too old to do this sort of thing right now, but let's say I'm a product owner in a medium-sized company and I want to integrate AvaTax into our ERP system and I want to offer this as a feature that sets our product aside for everyone. I can still come to you and work on a custom integration then, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So, really this is a feature that's not only useful for somebody starting out their business, but if I wanted to have an accounting system that just boasted native tax, don't we have a program called Avalara Included?
Yeah, we do. So there absolutely is a program for Avalara included. It's essentially packaging Avalara within your integration and making that available to your customers. You want to?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the benefits of that solution, and I've had quite a few partners that have come to me in the past few months that have decided, it's too much work to maintain an internal tax engine. My customers need this solution. I believe that there's value added here, and we can create a whole revenue stream around this, creating an internal tax engine utilizing Avalara, whether that be white labeled or powered by, to really give Avalara to every single one of my clients the moment they sign up, and integrate our whole process within their onboarding process of the business system as well.
So if I was going to create a marketplace, like if I was going to set up a marketplace where people could sell their knit sweaters, obviously this was something my wife did a lot of over the winter, but she's kind of moved off of it now. But if I was going to set up a marketplace for people who are selling their own knit goods, I could then sign up a bunch of people and get all of those vendors to use AvaTax for their tax calculation through this Avalara included program, right?
You are correct, absolutely. And we've seen quite a few marketplaces that have decided to go this route. And especially with the states creating new legislation around tax compliance and making it more difficult, it's becoming more of a burden on businesses to be able to maintain that internal tax engine. And utilizing Avalara just helps outsource that one functionality feature that they don't have to maintain.
Gotcha.
Focus on what they want, which is the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Selling your knit sweaters.
Knit sweaters, yeah. You don't have very many exemption certificates with knit sweaters, do you?
No, not too many.
Yeah. All right, so let's continue on with your presentation. I'm sure you guys actually had like a timeline for how you wanted to do this, but let's make sure to reserve a little bit for answering people's questions at the end.
Yeah, sure. These last few slides we'll get through in just 30, 40 seconds here. Mm-hmm. But really, this slide here is talking about what is the process to certify. So again, I touched on this briefly earlier, was that what we're looking for beyond what may be a custom integration. Things that you might not have on a custom integration would be like a configuration screen. That may be something you handle in the config file or it's hard-coded. So we're looking for how do you configure the AvaTax, the integration to a particular AvaTax account. Mm-hmm. How do you identify client exemptions? Again, something that may not be handled in a one-off custom implementation. We're also looking for product taxability handling. So we'd like that handled within the application. We also want to make sure that the transactions are successful. You're calling us in appropriate times with an appropriate amount of API requests, and that you're recording those transactions clearly. We also, for certified integrations, we actually assign identifications to those integrations. So we want to make sure that when you're calling our service with the correct identification, not that server audit clarity. And then lastly, we want to make sure that, hey, there's some documentation behind this integration. That is not just an integration. You got to figure it out all on your own. So we're looking for a user guide, some implementation path, and what are the support options for the integration as well. Okay. So is it all right if I sidetrack away from this, because we've got a question on the chat channel. So I'd like to halt the PowerPoint for a second and get an answer to this customer. And I'd also like to mention that if anyone else has questions you'd like to ask, please put them in the chat channel, and I'll go ahead and read them off to Bob and Evan. Bob, I think this one's probably for you. This person is asking, they're building an e-commerce website, and they need to know how to decide whether exemption certificates should be part of the website. So if the website is catering at all to business, then yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, with our Cert Capture SDK, you have an option at the checkout screen to incorporate an option for if the customer buying from the merchant is indeed a business and they are tax exempt, you can easily drop a link in that says I'm tax exempt and would redirect that customer, or even pop it up in a modal box, a link to our Cert Express application.
Yeah, let me see if I can actually bring that up on screen just so I can show people how easy this is.
Oh, yeah.
This is actually one of my favorite things about our exemption certificate system. Is rather than actually building your own user interface for entering an exemption certificate, you can actually have your application link directly to Cert Express, and then all of the process of entering data, filling in information about your exemption certificate, Avalara will handle that for you. So for your e-commerce website, what you would do is you would put a link in there, and the link would direct your customer to this site It would pre-fill in all of the necessary information. It would allow the customer to upload the image for their exemption certificate, and then they could proceed with their sale process with their transaction being exempt. So
couldn't have said it better myself, Ted.
Thanks. It's probably because you and I have been talking about
we've
this
been
for a
talking
year
about this.
now.
Yeah, and you know, it's also, you know, I think important to point out that you do have an API specific for this. So if you didn't want to use the SDK, there is an API request that you can trigger to file this off, you know, with the customer checkout process. But yeah, if the integration or your platform is at all B2B, having exemption handling during checkout, or at least within the CRM component of it, is a huge differentiator.
Great. I have another question here. This is about refunds. This customer is asking, how do you make sure that you get the correct tax amount on a refund?
Always an important question, always something that a lot of partners struggle with. It's how to get the correct tax on the refund. And really what that comes back to is the tying the refund to the original transaction. So if I purchase my kids something for Christmas, give it to them at Christmas, everybody's excited, then 2 weeks later they decide, you know what, Dad, I really don't like this, I want to send it back. Tax rates generally change, you know, right around the first of the year. So we want to make sure that when we're processing that refund, we're either using the refunds API, which will automatically tie that refund back to the original transaction, or within the tax request for the refund, we're passing a tax override of a tax date, with that tax date being equal to the original transaction date. What that'll do is it'll force the tax engine to calculate the refund using the same tax tables as the original transaction date.
Okay, so I'll just put this up on screen since you're referring to it. This is the API for generating a refund. So this is what Bob is talking about here. I'd just like to point out, somebody raised an interesting problem on a recent webinar. Specifically, what they said was, what happens if I close one of my franchise offices and then have to give a refund afterwards? And the problem would be, well, your tax profile might have changed. Let's say you had a district office in Denver, Colorado, and you sold something in Denver, Colorado. But then later on, you close that office in Denver, Colorado, and open up a new one in, you know, some other nearby state. Well, all of a sudden, you might be giving a refund on a completely different tax schedule than the original sale, because you would have sold it under the Denver, Colorado tax rules, and you would have given the refund based upon the, you know, Idaho or
some other state,
Nevada or something.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. That would be one where you'd likely want to talk with your tax professional or your CPA to make sure you're doing it the correct way.
Yeah.
Yeah. For those real complex scenarios, yeah, absolutely. We still want you to talk with a tax professional to make sure you're handling it appropriately.
And I'd like to mention, we have a couple different ways you can reach out to a tax professional over here under the support page. There's a variety of different options, and if you pick one of these, you can contact our help team, you can contact your customer support person, or you could reach out on the forums, and we'd be happy to talk to you about this problem. All right, let me go to the chat channel for the next question. I think there's a follow-up question. Do we need to just call the refund API if we need to use refund? I'll try to take that one because that's more of a programming focus. So what I'll say here is that the refund API is specifically a shortcut. And what it actually does under the hood is it creates an inverse copy of the transaction. So when you originally create a sale transaction, what you're doing is you're calling create transaction of type sales invoice, and you're constructing an invoice that is a positive amount. And that positive amount of money goes from the customer onto your books. It becomes revenue that you generate. When you're calling refund transaction, you tell it which sales invoice you're refunding, and by default, the API will create an exact inverse, a negative transaction that will net out that original transaction to zero. However, there are a couple other options beyond that, because refunds are not always the absolute simplest thing out there. There's a couple of different possibilities. One choice is that you could specify a tax-only refund. And this would be really useful in the case where a customer comes back to you a month later and says, you know what, I really want my tax back. Here's my resale certificate that I should have provided you in the first place. Well, you can call the refund transaction API and just give the customer back their tax. but still keep the original sale on the books. Another thing you could do is you could construct a partial refund, and you could specify a certain number of refund lines. You could specify that you only want to refund one line item. Like maybe I purchased 5 sweaters and 3 books, and I only want to refund the books. You could then say, I want to refund only the books. Well, what the refund API is doing under the hood is it's guaranteeing that the tax amount that it gives back is correct for the portion of the original transaction that you're refunding. So I hope that answers that question. Let me go back to the channel here. All right, next question. Developed a sample application. I want to get all tax codes custom as well as Avalara supported tax codes. How can you get both custom and system-defined tax codes? Bob, can you explain what's the difference between a custom tax code and a system-defined tax code?
Sure. So a system-defined tax code, well, let me couch this by saying they both function the same way. However, system-defined tax codes already have the tax logic or the rules in place in the engine. So if you're using a clothing tax code, for example, PC 040100, in New York, the expectation is if the single item is less than $100, that tax code is going to result in no tax being calculated. If the item is over $110, you will get tax calculated. You can get those codes by calling our definitions endpoint and pulling down all of the Avalara system tax codes. Now, again, those are the ones that have the logic already defined behind them. Customers have the option to create their own custom tax codes and their own tax logic for those codes within their Avalara account. So to get those, you'd actually have to do a get on a particular company profile to get those tax codes as well. So you wouldn't have one API call to pull that information into your application. You'd actually have to do a couple different calls. So
the first thing here is I'm showing on the screen, this is the list tax codes API. This API lists system-defined tax codes. These are the ones that Avalara has researched and studied for you. On the other hand, the custom tax codes are available down here in the documentation in the tax code section. And there's a different API called query tax codes or list tax codes by company. This will give you the custom tax codes here. So I'm glad you asked that question. I'm going to go back to our developer documentation team and ask them to add some additional clarifiers to this documentation page to better distinguish which ones are system-defined and which ones are customer-defined tax codes. So thank you. I appreciate that question.
That's a good one.
Bob, can I just back step one more? What is the difference between a tax code and an item?
Yeah. So an item is going to an item is something you associate a tax code to. So within either the Avalara account or within all of our certified integrations, there's an option to associate an item to a tax code. When that item is passed to AvaTax in a transaction, we're going to look up whether or not the item has a tax code associated with it in the API request, or we're going to look at a table within their Avalara account to see if that item has listed and has a tax code associated with it. Then we'll use the logic behind that tax code for the, like the clothing example, when we do the calculation and return that tax calculation.
So briefly, up here on the screen, I've got the items API. The items process is a way of decoupling your tax calculation from your product's taxability. So if you were to create a product, if you were to create an item and call that item a digital download, like I was dealing with one customer recently, obviously I can't name names, but they have a problem where they've got an item that is under dispute with an auditor. So what they do is they create that item and they set up their e-commerce system to call AvaTax with that item code. And then regardless of what the auditor finally rules, they can then change that item's configuration in AvaTax without having to go back and reprogram their software. So they've essentially decoupled their program from their product taxability. And if the auditor comes back and tells them that it needs to change, then they can, of course, do that without having to ship a new software release.
Fantastic.
So unfortunately, I think we're just running low on time here. I can see we've got some more questions, but I may not be able to get to all of them right here. What I would like to mention is we do have available the Avalara community forums, and I would love to continue working with all of you on the forums after this. So what I'll do is I'll show you, if you go to community.avalara.com, Bob and myself manage a team of people that coordinate the responses on this website. And if you ask us any questions that we weren't able to get to on today's webinar, we'll make sure that somebody gets you an answer. And, we look forward to working with you. Thank you very much, and I appreciate you guys bringing to my attention areas where I can keep on improving documentation. Bob, Evan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Ted. This was
Thanks for having us,
fantastic.
Ted.
Yeah.
All right. Take care, everyone. I appreciate you spending a half hour out of your day with us.